Well, good evening. Good evening from Thornton, Colorado, in the Denver metro area. My name is CC Hawkley, and this guy over here, I'll let him introduce himself.
Hey, it's Scott MacDonald, Colorado Hockey Now, live from Denver, Colorado. Happy to be here.
There you go. Yeah, this is a new podcast venture we've got going on. We tried to do the intro roll, and my computer is having some fits in regards to that. So not a problem. First episode, we're going to have some kinks, but welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone on the planet Earth to the Colorado Eagles Tape to Tape podcast with CC and Scott. So glad you can join us tonight or today or whenever you're watching this. And we're really thankful that we could do this. A lot of people have been engaging on social media. They've been very curious, very excited about what's going to be coming down the pike with this podcast. And, I have to say, when I had this idea to start this, I was wondering, is there a Colorado Eagles exclusive podcast out there? And the answer is no. And so I reached out to Scott, and Scott was like, yeah, I'm willing to jump on. And like he said, he's writing with Colorado Hockey Now. That's a very, very breaking development. Well, maybe not very, very, but we'll put one very in front of there. Yeah. And so he's writing with Colorado Hockey Now with longtime Colorado Avalanche reporter and correspondent Adrian Dater and Ashley Glover as well. Is that correct?
He is on there as well, yeah.
Yeah.
All the way from Australia, huh?
All the way from Australia?
Yeah, I think that's where he resides, maybe.
Huh. I didn't know that, but man.
If you're wrong about that, maybe it's somebody else. I don't know, to be honest with you.
That's all right. Episode 1, we can make some mistakes here and there.
I'm new to it as well, so still trying to meet my teammates.
Right, exactly. Yep, still trying to get the names down and everything. Yeah. You'll be calling, Adrian Dates or something like that, some shortened hockey nickname.
He goes by Dater these days. It's a cool little nickname, I guess.
Right. Just get called by your last name. That works. But yeah, Scott and I, we're going to be talking about the Colorado Eagles specifically. And of course, me being from the Sin Bin and Scott being of Colorado Hockey Now, it's a cross promotional effort. We're definitely covering our bases here, and we want to cover the Colorado Eagles to the best of our abilities so that the AHL market here along the Front Range is well represented. So that's it. That's my intro. Do you got anything to add to that, Scott?
No, I mean, you presented this idea to me. I think it's a great idea. I mean, podcasts are huge nowadays. Like, why not do one, and especially with like such a big market like there is in Northern Colorado with the Eagles. I figured you would think there would be one, like you said, but there's not. And, I mean, I think we have a fantastic opportunity here to talk to a lot of our fans. I mean, they're selling out a lot of games over there in Northern Colorado. It's again, like I said, a huge market. I think people will be into this idea, and I'm excited to talk Colorado Eagles hockey, and I'm sure a lot of people are excited to listen as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I mean, the Eagles have represented Northern Colorado on the professional hockey front for, 17 years now. 2003 was when they jumped into the CHL. So CHL, ECHL, now AHL. I mean, they have been the poster child of what it means to be a minor league hockey success. And so, yeah, very excited for this. Very excited to start this joint endeavor. That's what I was trying to say.
Yes.
And yeah, I've got the first category, the first order of business. And, off the top of my head, I titled it First Things First. I'm kind of a guy that likes to, have some structure, but, keep it pretty loosey-goosey still. So first things first, we got some black aces from the Eagles that are going to be participating on the Colorado Avalanche, or at least are on the Phase 3 training camp roster. And this roster has understandably been expanded because of COVID-19 and all that has come with that delay-wise in regards to all of professional sports in North America and beyond. And so we are starting with 31 players on the Phase 3 training camp. And the first player I have mentioned here, obviously it's in alphabetical order, but Scott, you were there. You were at the Pepsi Center. You got to see the Avalanche train, and you got your temperature taken and everything. I saw that on social media. And so Tell us a little bit about what you saw. I mean, Shane Bowers was a name that popped up on my social media feed, and tell me what you saw regarding him and just some of the other Eagles players that made the training camp roster.
Yeah, I mean, so Shane Bowers kind of, I guess, a little bit of a hiccup in his camp so far. I mean, he took a high stick from Tyson Jost. I wasn't there that day that happened. I believe Adrian Dater was there covering that. So he was out for the past couple of days. I just saw him actually for the first time. I guess it would have been yesterday. He was back on the ice for the scrimmage. Thought he looked good, but again, I haven't seen too much of him. That was the first exposure I personally had with him, and I mean, you kind of got to hope it doesn't really hurt his chances in the bubble. But every practice counts. You only have 2 or 3 weeks before you sprint to Edmonton, and we'll see if he makes that team. But
sure,
I think he's a guy that a lot of Avs fans, a lot of Eagles fans are obviously excited about. He's a former first round pick, and I think one day he's gonna be a top 6 forward for the Avalanche, and we'll see if that happens. But
yeah, obviously one of their biggest prospects, like you said, first round pick and everything. And I will say I don't want to make this feel like, I mean, obviously, like I said, you went to the Pepsi Center and everything like that, but
sure.
This is definitely a collaboration here, and I don't want to feel like I'm the interviewer and you're the interviewee or anything.
Right.
So it's like I'm trying my best to find a balance here because like I told you before the show, I've hosted now 40 or close to 40 episodes of the End of the Corners podcast through the Sinbin. And so I'm always used to being the interviewer, not the cohort, like the co-host rather.
Exactly,
so it's like, I'm used to being the interviewer. So with that said, I don't want to, I want to apologize if I go into interviewer mode, because that's kind of what I know. So
I get it. I've got to see it firsthand. Not a lot of people do, but give your take on the Eagles side of things. I can give my take on the Avs camp side of things. We'll make this conversational, and let's have ourselves a time.
Well, of course, absolutely, yeah. I guess I was just apologizing because I don't want to be like, well, hey Scott, how you doing? And
I'm always the interviewer, I guess. So it's nice to be the interviewee for just a second there, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. No, I totally get that. Get that. So, a few other names. I'll throw them out there. Eagles and Avs fans know this by now, but if you've been under a rock the past, week or so, Kevin Connaughton, Sheldon Dries, Michael Hutchinson, Anton Lindholm, Jacob MacDonald, your long lost cousin, spelled the same in everything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No relation, no.
What's that?
I said no relation, no.
No relation, though. Right, right. I think we established that early on when we were talking. Logan O'Connor, Connor Timmins, TJ Tynan, and last but not least, goaltender Adam Werner. Obviously, Hutchinson and Werner kind of on there as a contingency plan, I would imagine, for Philip Grubauer. Names I haven't said in a while. Philip Grubauer and Pavel Francouz. Francouz?
Depends on who you ask. I'm a Francouz kind of guy, though.
Yeah. I think I've heard I think I've heard it on play-by-play as Francouz.
Yeah. I think that's the, I guess, North American pronunciation that's widely accepted on the broadcast. If you listen to Altitude or whatever, you listen to long-time play-by-play Eagles guy, Kevin McGlue, he'll tell you it's Francouz. But
there you go. Yeah. Yep. Tomato, especially with a lot of the foreign players. So,
exactly.
So with those names, I mean, you've got 10 players on the 31 player squad that are coming from the Colorado Eagles or played half of their games at the AHL, or less than half their games at the NHL level, I guess is a better way to put that. That's what I saw on various press postings and everything like that. So of those names, I mean, who, gosh, again, you were there. I mean, who are the guys that are going to get that chance to potentially go to Edmonton and play with Colorado in both the kind of the round robin tournament to determine some seeding amongst the top 4 seeds and going on into the first round?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at it, there's obviously the 23 locks that you have that are already currently like Avalanche players, which, do the quick math on that, it leaves you 8 guys. I guess 8 of those 10, 11 black aces from the Eagles that are going to get an invite. I kind of I guess it starts maybe with the goaltenders. I think given like the issues that the Avs have had goaltending, as they've had 5 different goalies start this year, I think you take all 4 goalies to the bubble just in case. It's one of those things. So I think that said, Hutchinson and Werner, I think they're going. They're locks, which leaves us 25 of your 31 there. Then you, I guess, kind of have to go down the list a little bit. It's like, do you take extra forwards, or do you trust your D-men to stay healthy? Cale Makar's been out for a little while, and no one knows what's going on. Obviously, they can't talk about what's going on there, but there is some definite concern about what's going on. So do you take extra defensemen? Who knows? Like, I think I would say you take 2 to 3 extra D-men and maybe 3 to 4 forwards. Who's impressed me so far? I think if you ask Coach Bednar, someone from the Denver Post asked him yesterday what they thought about Conor Timmins and a few of the other young Eagles guys who's impressed him. And he raved about Conor Timmins. I asked him a question as well about that, just the difference he's seen, the maturation he's seen from him, from, I guess, coaching him in early training camp, the beginning of the regular season, to, getting in those 2 regular season games, kind of shocking the world when he came out of nowhere and made that NHL roster, versus what he's seen from him now and what he's seen from him at the pro level with the Eagles and his development. And he said, he's grown in confidence. He could see that. His speed's getting, better, his strength looking good. He said he's a guy that he definitely thinks is that they're considering taking to the bubble. And I think he's a guy that, might make it into the bubble. I think there's a good chance Timmins makes it, which is going to, make a lot of Eagles and Avs fans very, very happy, because we all know his story, and it's kind of a Cinderella story, I guess, and people are very excited about him. He also mentioned Coach Bednar yesterday when he was asked about who impressed him. He mentioned Logan O'Connor. He went on for 30, 40 seconds about, how great he's been, his two-way defensive game. Obviously, he got a few NHL games too, so that kind of helps in his resume and helps build a case for him to make it to the bubble. So I think he's a guy that I could see going in. He also mentioned Dries, Sheldon Dries. He called him Dries, but we'll correct him if he says it again. I'll make sure I get on that. But yeah, he mentioned those 2 forwards and that defenseman from the Eagles. So I think if you want to maybe read into it a little bit, I think those are guys that are probably on his short list to make it to the bubble. So we're good on him. I think Kevin Connaughton's another guy who's probably a lock as well, just because he's got so much NHL experience that, should there be a bunch of injuries that happen, in the bubble, knock on wood, that he's a guy that could definitely step in and kind of be a veteran presence, and he can be trusted in the lineup. Other than that, it's a toss-up. I'm not entirely sure. TJ Tynan is another guy who I think, like, I tweeted this out, that he's got McKinnon-esque speed. He I mean that so seriously. I think he's such a fast, speedy guy. Not as quick with his hands as Nathan McKinnon, but I think if you want a guy who can skate with this Avalanche lineup, it's a young, fast team. I think TJ Tynan is definitely a guy that can keep up for sure. But we'll see. Again, only time will tell. We got another week of training camp before those cuts are made, but I'll be interested to see how it goes. Yeah,
you and the rest of the Avalanche country and Eagles country for sure. And I was going to mention Tynan as well. I mean, you pretty well covered all the bases for sure, but Tynan, his playmaking ability, I mean, there's a reason that he led the Eagles in scoring, and the majority of that scoring came from assists. Like his playmaking ability is just second to none. And he really, what are the words I'm looking for here? Like, he would really be a good contingency plan if one of the Avalanche's playmakers went down. And that's the thing, is that this whole COVID-19 pandemic has really changed the playoff structure. I mean, that's a given. I mean, that's saying that the sky is blue at this point. But the NBA, they're down in the bubble in Orlando. They're having to adjust and make sure that they're not, bringing up women to their hotel room or, anything like that. I saw a tweet about that. Some random gal was like, "Hey, I already got invited to the bubble," and it was like, well,
oh my God, what are we doing here?
Right? Yeah, and maybe she was just pulling everybody's leg and being like, "Oh, hey, this is what happens." But, yeah, it's just a matter of the fact that this is going to be how the playoffs are, is that there has to be so many more contingency plans, and there has to be, so many more. Okay, if we're going to need a playmaker, or if we're going to need somebody who, a shutdown defenseman, or more of a two-way defenseman, or, a sniper, it's just, and it's so hard to predict that because like you said, if, Philip Grubauer, Pavel Francouz, if any of them go down with COVID-19, that's an automatic 14-day quarantine. And
Right.
so, yeah, to take 4 goaltenders to Edmonton or to Toronto, if you're, over there in the Eastern Conference, I think it's a wise thing. And, at first I'm like, well, why is Hutchinson and Werner even being considered right now? But I mean, obviously you have to at this point because, yeah, those are your guys, and those are what you're going to have to do and who you're going to have to bring if you're going to succeed and if you're going to have a healthy roster that competes.
Right. Yeah.
And so, yeah, to kind of conclude that, something I noticed, and you can very well confirm this too, because you saw a number of Eagles games this season, is the depth that the Avalanche organization has in general. And I think if Avs fans and Eagles fans, of course, by proxy and by, players in the game, but I think that's what they have to hang their hat on, is the depth of the Avalanche organization. Because when the Avalanche suffered that string of injuries in February, when Grubauer went down, when Rantanen went down, I think, was it Calvert that went down too?
I lost count, They've lost so many man games to injury. It's been rough, but to your point, yeah, I mean, the Eagles, they stepped up, and I don't know what month that was, maybe I guess, November, December, when I thought half the Avs roster went down.
There was two stretches, actually. I mentioned the latter one in February.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was one in November too. That's good on you for remembering that. But
yeah, don't quote me on that. But
I think you're right. I remember seeing the transaction list. I think you're right. But the fact that the Eagles players went up to the Avs and they did well, and they hung in there in the standings, and then the Grizzlies players came up to the Eagles and they did well, and the Eagles hung in there in the standings too. So it's like, to have that kind of organizational depth, and for the Eagles to have that kind of depth with the Avalanche prospects and with AHL contracted guys specifically, I think that was a huge, that's a huge thing. And I think that bodes well for Colorado going into the playoffs, and in my opinion, could gear them up for maybe a round 2 or a round 3 appearance.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a good and bad problem to have. I guess it depends on who you ask. On the player side of things, you got guys like Tyson Jost on the Avs roster who, former first-round pick. A lot of people think he deserves to be on the team, but it's just how deep this Avs roster is. He's one of those guys who's a 13th, 14th forward at this point. And, I mean, same situation like the Eagles. Knock on wood, you kind of hope these Eagles players don't play in the bubble. I guess if that's maybe not the best way to say that, but because then it means you're healthy or whatever. But you feel very, very confident if you're an Avs fan or Eagles fan, or if you're Joe Sakic, any of those guys, that you can have those guys that can step up and easily help them succeed like they did in November and February for those stretches where half the roster was down for the Avalanche.
Yeah, I think that was kind of it was a good sign. It was a good litmus test, I suppose, if you want to put it that way, to have players go down with injury, because now you're going to be in a situation where players could very well go down with COVID-19. And yeah, if that's the case, then you've got the opportunity to really kind of lean back on that experience and the guys that you brought up during those times. And again, I think it bodes well for the Avs because they've been there. And granted, teams have been there. You've got 30 other NHL teams that have suffered injuries and things like that. But it just, in recent memory, to have as many injuries as the Avalanche had, and for them to respond the way they did, it was kind of a proving ground, unbeknownst to everyone at the time, but a proving ground as to what they're going to encounter in Edmonton.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. And again, good problem to have if you're Joe Sakic, but you're feeling very, very confident with the guys you're bringing, because they could step in. They've done it before, and I'm sure they can do it again.
Exactly. All right. Yeah. So we've got games starting. Well, let's see. Is it they're going to be playing starting round robin play on, what is it, July 30th?
I want to say the first round robin is August 1st. I think the 27th to the 29th, we're going to have some exhibition games for some of the teams. Yeah.
Gotcha. That's probably what I saw. The evening news isn't always the best, isn't always the best source to see that with graphics and things like that. But I did see one saying, MLS started on July 7th. NHL is going to start, the Avs are going to play on the 29th and then the Nuggets are going to play here, and then the Rockies are going to play here. So yeah, things are starting to pick back up. And I know that, we're all kind of cautiously wading into this, and, everybody in hockey, everybody in the NBA, any sport, has chosen to do this and to go forth and be in the bubbles, as it were, in their respective leagues. So we're definitely, we're looking forward to it, but is it unfair to say that it's kind of a tempered optimism at this point?
I mean, I think, it's one of those things, I guess, where you're hoping for the best, but this is so unprecedented in what they're doing. And I think the way they plan this out, I think it's the best possible way they could be doing it. But you never know. All it takes is that one guy on the team to get it, and then you pass it around the locker room, and all of a sudden you're shutting down the entire league. And the NHL's already said that they would do that. If they have multiple positive tests, they could be, in the Stanley Cup Finals and just shut it all down and cancel everything. But
right.
We hope it doesn't happen, but it's scary times. I'm glad to have sports back, but yeah, it's definitely a cautious optimism kind of thing, and you're kind of holding your breath, but we're hoping for the best. Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah. And that's all we can do at this point is everybody keep wearing their masks, and all the athletes. What's that?
So rule number one, yeah, wear the mask.
Rule number one, wear the mask. Exactly. And then everybody in the bubbles that are athletes, stay in the bubbles.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, that takes care of that topic. And let me pull up here. I was going to, I can't minimize this meeting while recording. I understand that. But let me poke around here on my desktop. I've got some AHL signings that I wanted to cover. Okay. And let's see here for next season. We'll take a little gander at some of the AHL contracts, and then also some NHL two-way contracts and entry-level contracts, aka guys that will probably be seeing time with the Eagles next season. Yeah. So I'll pull up this image to read off of it, because I can't remember off the top of my head. But goaltending-wise, the Eagles signed Peyton Jones on May 4th to a 2-year AHL contract. The Penn State standout netminder. They got him under contract. Just a few days before that, on April 30th, the Avalanche signed Justice Anunin to a 3-year entry-level contract. So they locked him up, the draft pick. AHL contracts, defenseman Keaton Middleton. I've got my bar from my microphone right in the way of my TV screen, my laptop screen. So Keaton Middleton from the San Jose Barracuda last season, he'll be playing for Pacific Division rival Colorado this coming season, whatever that may be. But the Eagles also re-signed Ryan Wagner. They signed for Charlie Gerard to a 1-year 2-way AHL contract, so he may spend some time in Utah. March 27th, Avs re-signed Jacob MacDonald to a 2-year NHL contract extension. 25th, you got TJ Tynan. We mentioned him as well. 1-year NHL contract extension. And then March 18th, right after all of this, the season was put on hold and would eventually be canceled, but centerman Cal Burke was signed to a 1-year AHL deal. And that's what we have thus far, signing-wise, from the Colorado Eagles, and 2-way and entry-level contracts from the Avalanche. Have you had a chance to take a look at any of these guys? Obviously, MacDonald, Wagner, Tynan, all coming back. But have you had a chance to look at any of these guys and really say, hey, this is a signing that I'm really excited about. I'll give you mine here in a second, but I want to hear yours.
Okay. I mean, I'm excited about the Peyton Jones thing. I don't know too much about him, but I saw, the day they signed him, I went on YouTube and just, did a general search of some of his highlights at Penn State. I think he's going to be a fantastic backup to Werner, if that's the case, if he becomes the backup or what have you. But I think I like Charlie Gerard too. He's a small guy, but he's speedy, he's feisty, and he can score some goals. So I'm excited to see what he could do for sure.
Yeah, it's those small, speedy, feisty guys you got to be careful of. The Brad Marchands of the world, if you will.
Dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth, man. Like right with the TJ Tynan thing earlier. Then you got Peyton Jones. I guess we're just
great
on the same way.
As they say, yeah.
There you go. Great minds think alike. I knew I got you on here for a reason.
There we go.
But Peyton Jones, yeah, I got to talk to his coach, his head coach over at Penn State, Guy Godowski. And man, he had nothing but good things to say about him. Not just his athletic ability. I mean, he made it clear that Peyton Jones is an athlete. I mean, the man is just an athletic specimen. But his devotion to finishing college, like that was important to him. And so he spent his 4 years at Penn State, and Coach Godowski made it a point to point that out to me and said, listen, this kid is not just athletic, but he's a leader. And he's not like a loud, boisterous leader. He's kind of that quiet leader, the lead by example, and he will correct you if need be, but he's not going to come up into your face and holler at you. He'll correct you, but it's not like a over the top in your face sort of, that kind of correction to the point of just, berating someone. So that's kind of what excites me about seeing Peyton Jones is seeing his video and seeing his clips and everything. The man he was a godsend for the early on Division I Penn State hockey program, and the fact that they're getting in the Big Ten championship and things like that with powerhouses like, Michigan and Ohio State, and throw Michigan State in there too. It's like, or Notre Dame. Can't forget Notre Dame as well. So yeah, I mean, Peyton Jones is probably the most, the guy that stands out the most for me, and the person I'm most excited to see next season. And I mean, you go with who you know, and Peyton Jones was kind of the person that I was bestowed the most knowledge upon by his head coach over there at Penn State. I mean, it's a real exciting. It's exciting to see, how it moves forward, but at the same time, it's like, well, what is the goaltending picture going to look like next year? And that transitions into our next segment quite well. I put it out there on the Twitter sphere, and I keep bonking my mic stand here with my hat. Sorry about that. But I've got the next and final segment called Asking the Feed. So I put the question out there, any questions, Eagles country, and I got a couple hits. So we've got some questions from social media here. Yep. Drink your water. Stay hydrated, my friend.
I'm ready.
You're ready. Here we go. At Johnny J. Tan, that's Tan with 2 N's, asks, what's the goalie situation going to be like for the Eagles next year? Which ones will be bouncing back and forth from the ECHL and AHL? I know injuries will be a factor, as they always are. Just a thought. So I'll defer to you, my good man. What do you say to the goaltending picture and how it's shaping up for the Eagles? And, well, if you've kind of kept your eye on that, to the Grizzlies at some extent.
Sure. I mean, I think you start at the top. I mean, right now you only have 2 goalies signed to AHL contracts next year with the Eagles, and it's, the aforementioned Adam Werner. You got the Peyton Jones. So I think you start at the top. I think Adam Werner is going to be your de facto number 1 goalie. Obviously, the Avs. I think he just turned 23. He's going to be going into 24 next year. I think kind of now's that time where you got to be the number 1 goalie in the number 1 farm system and kind of get as much time as possible. I think this past season we saw, Miska kind of get, work his way into that number 1 role. Like Werner had some injuries, sure, but I mean, Miska kind of played lights out that they really had no choice but to play him. And I think
he did.
Yeah. I'll be interested to also see, side note, if they re-sign him, we'll see because again they're for sure going to need another goalie. But I think it's Adam Werner. You got Peyton Jones, and then depending on if they sign like a veteran to back up Werner or not, I think maybe Peyton Jones, that guy that kind of spends time between the ECHL and the AHL with the Grizzlies and the Eagles respectively. And I guess we'll see how that goes. But I think to answer your question, I think number one, you're going to see a lot of Werner next year. He's going to get a solid 60-70% of your games, I'm thinking, and then Jones or whoever future to be signed player, I think he gets the rest of the games.
Do you think? Gosh, I was kind of when I did my preview last year. Excuse me. When I did my preview last year of kind of the goaltending tree for the Eagles next season, and you had guys that were signed to, I want to say two-way AHL contract, like a Mason MacDonald, and he played pretty much all season down there with Utah, and even Hunter Miska dipped down with the Grizzlies for a little bit there when injuries were a concern until Utah shored up their goaltending woes by acquiring Martin Ouellet, really experienced, really good goaltender that I got a chance to see a number of times covering the playoffs there in the ECHL in a couple seasons ago here with the Sinbin. But not to ramble on too long, last season you had Werner coming over from Sweden, and that was kind of a question mark. Like, is he gonna play with Colorado and the Eagles and everything? And of course you got injuries that played a factor, and you had to trade Malash for Antoine Bibeau. And so, yeah, it's just such kind of an up in the air sort of thing. And Hunter Miska did so well last year. If anything, if the Eagles don't sign him, I think that he's secured himself somewhere else on an AHL contract.
I'm all for Miska. I think, he's a stud. He made, that crazy barehanded save. The guy just plays lights out. He's a nice guy. That to me matters a lot. I like that kind of stuff. He's young. I think he's only 25. And yeah, like you just said, I think it'd be silly if they don't at least extend him some sort of offer to remain with the team. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, because depending on the situation, I'm sure training camp will sift out some of the goaltending depth chart and everything. But with Justice Noonan coming over from overseas, signing his entry-level deal and going to be playing in North America next season, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, as they say in my home state of Idaho. But the fact that, you've got Peyton Jones, you've got Adam Werner, and that's an awesome 1-2 combination for sure. Yeah. But the fact that you had the option to re-sign Hunter Miska, which I don't know if they'll take it. Like I said, if anything, he's risen his stock so much here in Colorado that he can pretty well sign.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And then, with Justice Noonan coming over, and Martin Ouellet is probably holding out for an AHL deal, at least a two-way AHL deal, because he got called up to Providence and they signed him to an AHL contract for the rest of the season. But he ended up playing with Utah after that one game that he went up to Providence for the rest of the season. So it'll be kind of interesting to see if Justice Noonan is ready for the AHL game. Does that bump a guy like a Peyton Jones? Or I don't think Adam Werner goes down to the ECHL, so it makes you wonder if Peyton Jones goes down and plays with Utah a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know who I heard this from, but I'm not so sure that a Noonan's going to be coming over. I think he might. I think there might be. Pardon me, because I don't exactly know what exactly the situation is, but I want to say he's got some sort of contract clause with the league that he's in now that might keep him there for another year. And it's also kind of one of those things like, get in line, kid. We got Werner over here. We don't really need two number one goalies kind of battling at each other when you want a Noonan to get as much time as possible because he's looking great. He's setting records over there. And I think you give Werner another year here in North America, see if he can work his way into maybe being an NHL product, and then you bring a Noonan over for I guess would be the 2021-22 season.
Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe he does come over. I don't know, but I want to say for someone, I was talking to someone and they told me something about that. I'm not sure, but it could be a dream. Who knows?
It can blend together sometimes. I get you, Scott. It's all good. But Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goaltending tree shakes out. But to answer your question, Johnny J. Tan, you got Peyton Jones, you got Adam Werner. I would agree with Scott in the sense that, that's probably going to be your 1-2, unless they do re-sign Miska, and then,
Yeah.
then we'll see. But as it stands now, I mean, Peyton Jones, like Scott said, he'll be a good number 2 behind Adam Werner because and again, like Johnny said here, I know injuries will be a factor. So
Always are,
always are. Exactly. All right. And then one more question from Asking the Feed at Marie Sexton, our good friend Marie.
Yeah.
She writes, I'm assuming the AHL season will run parallel with the NHL, but the ECHL, little crack there. I guess I need a little water.
There you go.
But the ECHL already has their season scheduled. I'm wondering how that will work given the number of players that would normally go back and forth between those two leagues, or will the ECHL reschedule?
Yeah, that's the question. So obviously, yeah, you would think, I think the AHL has already said that they would do, a concurrent kind of schedule with the NHL because obviously that makes sense. But yeah, with the ECHL going ahead, I don't know if maybe they restructure their schedule to more fit with the AHL, or I mean, who knows? Maybe it works out well this way because you got your AHL guys. Some of the Eagles can maybe go spend some time over in the ECHL when they get going and get some game speed and some practice time there before the AHL starts, which I think December 1st is what the NHL is shooting for to start the next season. So I guess you would think that the AHL would start roughly around then, if the AHL starts at all. That's another big question mark. But I guess that's conversation for a different day, maybe.
Right. Yeah, and to kind of elaborate on that a little bit. Goodness, excuse me. I feel the NHL and the AHL are a little bit more tied together.
Yeah.
And that goes without saying when you've got a number of your AHL franchises owned by your NHL parent club. The NHL and the AHL definitely are in deeper cahoots than the NHL and ECHL. Now, the AHL and the ECHL, I want to say it's not nearly as formal of a relationship, but obviously with the ECHL being the developmental place for AA hockey now, ever since the Central Hockey League folded,
sure.
It's something that from what I've heard, that the ECHL has no plans on delaying the season right now. Like that's not on the table currently.
Right.
But well, I shouldn't put it that way. I'm sure it needs to stay on the table because they need to plan for that, but it's not something that they are actively considering. They've got it on the table, but they're not actively considering it at this moment. So for now, yes, the ECHL season is scheduled to start in early to mid October there. And boy, I think it would help out all parties involved, in my opinion, if all three leagues ran concurrent with each other, as they've been known to do-ish. There might have been a week or two difference between, okay, the NHL starting now, the AHL starting now, the ECHL starting. But yeah, and who knows, like you said, maybe some AHL players get a chance to come down to the ECHL and play a little bit if they do start the season earlier. The main thing I wanted to drive home, without blathering on too much, is the gate-driven aspect of the ECHL and the AHL. It's the NHL's got TV deals, and they're a major professional sports league here in North America. The AHL and the ECHL are minor leagues, and they get the most of their profits from gate, from the attendance, from the people who see the games. And I'm sure merchandise plays a little bit of that too, plays a little bit of that into that as well. But yeah, I think being a gate-driven league, depending on how much the pulse and the finger that you have to have on the pulse of the nation and the continent regarding COVID-19, I think you have to be flexible, and maybe you do bump out that start to a December or a January just to kind of coincide with the NHL and the AHL, even though you're not nearly as interwoven as the NHL and the AHL are.
Yeah. I mean, is that like this a concern of yours at this point in time, that do you think there might not be an AHL season? Because it's something I've thought about quite a bit. Like you said, it's a gate-driven league. They, 90% of their profits, 95% maybe, are wholly dependent on the ticket sales. And if you can't have fans, they have no choice. It's just not financially feasible for them to play. And I think it's one of those things that even if they do, a lot of places are doing 25% capacity, half capacity, whatever it is. But
right.
I think that is not very sustainable for a league like the AHL, especially the ECHL. So I think it's one of those things where I don't know if we're going to have fans in arenas until there's a vaccine. And then who knows when that's happening. It's like I'm hearing, maybe June we might have at the earliest we get a vaccine mass produced
Sure.
in the world. So, then you're pushing through next summer until you get the AHL back or the ECHL. And it's tough. I think there's so much up in the air. Like that's kind of been the theme of this. We just don't know. No one's ever had to deal with this stuff before. We're all we're taking it in stride. We're taking it on the chin, and we're just hoping for the best. But I think until we get that vaccine, then there's a lot of question marks for a lot of things.
Well, and as much as it pains me to say it in regards to just kind of where our priorities are at as a country. I mean, obviously, sports. It's in the grand scheme of things, it is it's a luxury. It's a luxury to have sports and athletes and games to watch and things like that. But if there is a vaccine developed, I think you can bet your buns that that those vaccines can get to the players a lot easier, just like probably the COVID tests themselves.
Yeah.
And that if the NHL wants to make it a priority to get the AHL going and to kind of maybe take a little bit of the financial burden of 25% filled arenas and things like that, then that is a way that I can see the AHL season occurring. But yeah, I mean, other than that, that's a very valid question, Scott, and a very valid concern.
Yeah, it's a sad reality. It's something I've thought about quite a bit. It's like, I mean,
sure,
that's been my beat for a long time now, the Eagles. And it's like the fact that, maybe this season, even like right now, I'm going to Avs camps and it's all done like this. It's through Zoom. You can't go to the locker rooms anymore. It's all, you got to stay away from the players. And, that's kind of, I'm used to talking to the Eagles players like outside the locker room after practice, and sticking my hand in their face with my phone, recording their audio, and I don't that's not going to happen, So it's going to be tough. It's sad. You don't get to have that interaction with the players as journalists, but it is what it is. I think most people would just settle for just getting, hockey back or sports back just in general, but we got to be safe about that stuff.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I just said, who knows, this might be the new normal. That's a kind of a phrase that a lot of people start using, but who knows if we're ever allowed in locker rooms again. Even if we have a vaccine, it might still just be like players kind of, they appreciate their space on this stuff, and maybe they wouldn't mind just doing this stuff, electronically through Zoom from here on out. And media may never step foot in the locker rooms again, but
yeah, maybe not. But I mean, we'll just take it a day at a time and a moment at a time, and we'll see. I mean, it really depends on the progress of people, again, like I mentioned, wearing the masks, and basically how quickly a vaccine can be, developed and mass produced and things like that. So it'll really, it's contingent on a lot of things. So Marie, to give you a solidly flexible answer, we don't really know.
No idea.
No idea. Sorry. But like I said, from the sources that I've heard, the ECHL season is scheduled to continue as planned normally. Again, I'm more concerned about the ECHL than I am the AHL because of the fact that they're way more gate driven and they need the fans, they need the merchandise, they need everything, and Absolutely. They can't rely on a TV deal or an NHL team coming in, stepping in, and footing some of the bill. They don't have that luxury. So if any league I am concerned of the most out of the AHL and the ECHL, it's going to be the former East Coast Hockey League for sure.
Of course, yeah.
But all right, well, that's pretty much what I've got. What's that?
I said on that somber note, we'll wrap it up. Keep our fingers crossed, I guess.
Sure. Yeah, we'll keep our fingers. Yeah, we'll keep our fingers crossed and our masks on, and we'll see. We will see where this goes. But hey, like Scott was saying, and like he's covered, playoffs are going to start August 1. So hold on to your butts. Yeah. All righty. Well, episode 1 is in the books. How do you feel, Scott?
It felt good. We'll work out some kinks later, but I think we got something special that could potentially be going on here.
Yeah.
Talking to you, it's always, I love talking hockey. It's something, I have my medium of just typing it through the computer and, interacting with people on Twitter, but there's nothing like having, kind of a face-to-face, if you will, interaction with a fellow fan and a colleague.
No, yeah, sure. Absolutely. And you got to wet your whistle, at the training camp there and talking to Coach Bednar and everything. I may be a little jealous, not going to lie, but your schedule is obviously a little more conducive to that than mine. So I'm glad that we can get all of our bases covered here on the Tape to Tape podcast. So like hopefully the intro, we'll hopefully can attach the intro roll and the outro roll to this video. We tried to play it earlier, but it just wasn't cooperating. Technology is kind of a pain in the rear sometimes, but like hopefully the intro roll said when this first started, he's Scott MacDonald. I'm CC Hawkley. Be sure to go check us out. His Twitter handle is a little different. Can you describe it, Scott?
Yeah, so it's @offscottfree on Twitter, but the first O is it's a 0.
Yes. So. Thank you. That was a lot harder than I made it. I'm sorry. I could have explained.
You're good,
it, but yeah. And I'm CC Hawkley. My Twitter handle is Sin Bin Eagles, obviously because I'm covering the Colorado Eagles, and I write for the Sin Bin. It's pretty self-explanatory. Not quite as punny as Mr. MacDonald's over there, but which I do appreciate. But yeah, it's a little bit more straightforward, and that's okay. That's okay. But yeah, for Scott, I'm CC. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're gonna do this on a bi-weekly basis. Just we'll touch back with you guys and see how some of the Eagles performed in the Stanley Cup, round robin and round 1 of the playoffs, and we'll see who made the roster and who didn't, and we'll keep you posted on any signings as well. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Scott, for joining me, and we'll see you guys later on. Have a good one.